Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. Today's episode is brought to you by Patriot Mobile. You can check out the banner on the video, by the way, if you want to catch that website for patriotmobile.com. Use that promo code /WWFA at the end for some discounts. Today's episode, I'm talking disorganization, I'm talking corruption, complacency, planned chaos. I I'm kind of bringing in a lot of different thoughts on this show because as I look into that broad spectrum, like I tell you, that kind of that overview, I try not to get into, well, Elon Omar is doing this, or Donald Trump is doing that, or Iran, or whatever. I'm really kind of looking beyond the hot topics, which I'm going to bring a couple of them up today, though, but for purpose of examples. But I, I'm really just trying to get people to open their eyes more to the overall picture because I really believe we are losing our country because of whether it's planned chaos, the disorganization that results from it, whether it's complacency in the American people in multiple ways, or just the corruption that we're seeing in our government from our politicians, and it's become accepted. It's become something that, well, it happens, and or we get mad about it. We feel that we're doing our civic duty about pointing it out, whether it's the politician that you hate, love, dislike, think is doing something wrong, and that becomes the focus. But there's more. Kind of like, but wait, there's more. And I kind of try to point these things out as a way to say, hey, look, there's more, and stop focusing on the single issues and realize that focusing on single issues or the narratives or the hot topics or focusing on a few different things that kind of get your blood boiling makes you too guilty of complacency from ignoring or of ignoring all the other stuff. We the people are not being represented. It's too easy to say it like that. But basically that's what's happening as a result of the chaos. And also to say there's too many fiefdoms is kind of a lazy way of not going into the details about who's winning in America through the corruption and the chaos. But it's kind of a succinct way to say there's too many fiefdoms to be putting blame on any one person. And I say that because, look, in the last presidential term, people focused on Biden as being the problem, and people try to focus on the things that he was doing. And today, it's people that don't like Trump, and they focus on him. And meanwhile, everybody else, between the elected officials, the bureaucrats, the fiefdoms, the groups, the NGOs, are the ones that are benefiting from us focusing on one person. But let's, I'm gonna move away from that. I don't want to go in that direction today. Can we at least say, though, that there are too many people and groups with personal interest and that America isn't their priority? That the result is systemic corruption, a complacent public, a disorganized government, and chaos in our system and our marketplace. It's many reasons why in our marketplace people aren't prospering. This is why our country is not reaching its full potential for the people of America. Look at what is happening with people and groups with agendas asking how they can benefit from America and not what they can do so America will benefit. I'll bet we can look at when there was I, let me say it like this. I often look at timelines. I've said that before about there being many different timelines, on what's going on in our country. And I'll bet that we could look at the timelines and kind of put it over the time, put these timelines I'm going to tell you about over America and say from the date that this started happening to today, and we can kind of look at the different timelines and put them on top of each other, and we can see spikes, and I'll explain. I'll bet that we can look at the timeline of when there was a drop in voter turnout over the course of time in our country and generations. And I'll bet that that same timeline will line up with the timeline of politicians becoming career politicians, and also with the rise of bureaucracy and the rise of NGOs. And also, those same timelines will line up with the rise of blatant corruption and the rise of the control over our politicians by lobbyists. We could probably put all these things over and find out that they all have happened during the same timeline in American history. We could also say big industry. Let's look at the timeline of big industry. And I've got a different thought on this. But the timeline of big industry, when you overlap it, is going to show something different, I think. Because big industry has always had its power in America due to its size and necessity. But a rise in numbers of big industries, the timeline of the rise of big numbers of bigger industries, and tech companies using their ability to use their power for control of our government and our population to magnify their power and wealth instead of just for profit. So I think in the beginning of big industry, when big industry was on the rise, railroads and steel and stuff like that, the big tycoons were probably thinking more about money and profit than they were about control. They've always had a lot of control in our government. I get it. But today, I think big industry uses that its goal isn't just profit, it's about control and power at the same time. And that timeline has increased in today's time period because we look at the tech companies and the leaders of those tech companies, Bill Gates, uh, Facebook, all these different big corporations, and how much influence they have over our elected officials today. So it's more than profit, it's control. Our country, in the meantime, has become complacent, not just in our population, but also in voter turnout. Our population in voter turnout has become complacent. Our population has become complacent because we've been conditioned to not only rely on government, not to worry about this. Our ideologies or beliefs are more important than a functioning government. We've been conditioned to be, I don't want to say, to give up our work ethic because somebody's to take care of us. Somebody's going to bail us out. We've been conditioned by politicians that they've got this. They've got our backs. They're watching out for our beliefs and our ideologies. They've got us on that. Go back to sleep. Medical freedom. Government has made it uh, a, a, um, a priority, if you will, to make us feel like they're doing everything they can to take care of us in our medicine or our medical facilities or our health. They have conditioned us to believe, oh, we're going to make companies give you health care or we're going to give it to you for free. That Americans aren't as proactive, they become more complacent about their own health. So our society has become unhealthy, larger, overweight, and too reliant on medicine to feel empowered and healthy to fight for our freedoms and our liberties. That complacency, because of that, as a result, has caused us to kind of look the other way. We forgive elected officials more often. We become more complacent about what they're doing, or big industry, or the NGOs, or the lobbyists, because we're getting what we need. But these groups in the same timeline have gotten more control and more power and become more a part of the system, that complacency is expected, I guess you could say. But their power, or their quest for power, has crossed the Rubicon of freedom, personal liberties, our human rights, and it's crossed the Rubicon of the longevity of our nation. Their complacency is taking our country for granted, because you see all these different groups that have been fighting for power, gaining power on our complacent. They themselves are complacent because they take it for granted that their quest for power, their quest for profit, won't do anything to affect the longevity of our nation. And as a result, it's going to affect us all. Their complacency, their complacency, as I was saying, is taking our country for granted. Complacency, and that they take it for granted that their quest for power will not destroy the same foundation they use for stability in their lives, or for their families. They forget that their personal ideologies, goals, and beliefs that they are going after, these are more for the groups that are working to push their ideologies and beliefs, that have become complacent in believing that these same ideologies and beliefs will actually, or won't affect the stability of America. They forget that their personal ideologies, goals, and beliefs that they are going after or pushing in our country is going to destroy the very foundation of what holds our country together. I repeated that on purpose. Even the communities they live in are going to be affected, but they've gotten complacent in believing that what they're doing is going to affect the places that they live themselves. They don't believe that their own communities are going to be affected by what they're doing. But because their fiscal policies, their social issue policies, and their immigration ideologies and policies, for that matter, are going to undermine both the fiscal stability and the social stability of their communities. That's going to be affected, but they don't believe it because they're too complacent. Or is it arrogance? Or is it because they actually have nefarious plans? They don't care if they tear it all down. Maybe that's part of their plan. Maybe we see it as chaos and disorganization and complacency on everybody's part, because everybody's like, I don't care. My beliefs aren't going to affect the future of our country. It's always going to be here. But now at least my ideologies are going to be represented, or my social issues are going to be a part, or a fabric, be woven into the fabric of America. And so they kind of don't put the two together. They kind of ignore it. They kind of say, they're able to separate their beliefs, their ideologies, or social issues from the fabric of America. In there lies complacency. And as a result, we're in chaos. Or, as I said, is it planned chaos? Or is it just simply that there's so much corruption going on that we can't even see the forest from the trees? My best analogy is one to make to, or my best analogy is with morals. Most humans, I would even say all humans pretty much, are born knowing the difference between right and wrong. We're wired, knowing the difference between right and wrong is wired into our conscience. Most humans go through life living, working, and surviving on this planet for the good of humanity. It's the same with Americans. Most Americans live here and participate, or most we of course live here because we're Americans, but most Americans participate in the American experience with a love for our country and doing the right thing for America and respect for the Constitution, because most Americans believe in the perpetuation of America and the freedom that it offers for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But there are those, and there's groups that put themselves and their agendas before our country, whether it's naiveness, stupidity, or with malice. Just like it's important to maintain a moral society for the future of humanity and America for that matter, it is important to respect the laws of our nation for the future of our America. And not just the laws of our nation, not just the Constitution, but the rights and beliefs of others. We don't have to adapt, adopt, or abide by the beliefs of others. We just don't have to see ourselves having to destroy others to be victorious. I may be conservative, which I am, of course. I'm conservative, very pro America, love our Constitution, but I know there's others that don't believe the same thing as I do. But the moment that I try to destroy their beliefs, it gives them the right to try to destroy my beliefs or destroy what I believe in. And as a result, it opens the door to a quest for victory over each other's beliefs. I believe that if we perpetuate not only good ideas, values, morals, and good examples of what good policies do, and be able to show what doing the right thing does for our country, how it works, free marketplace, moral society. Yes, I'll say Christian beliefs. No, I'm not say forcing Christianity on every American. It ain't gonna happen. But just respecting others, we'll say. These types of things. Let me sidestep. I'm getting another thought here. There was a time when I asked an attorney, a defense attorney, how he could defend people that did the wrong thing. How could he defend criminals? Especially when it was Norm Pattis, by the way. I did an interview with Norm Pattis a while back, and he told me some examples of some really bad people that that he defended. And I asked him, how could he defend those people? And he said, well, the way our Constitution is, everybody is presumed innocent, of course, but the way the laws are rather, but the way our Constitution is, and the way our justice system is built, that if we did not give everyone, even the guilty, I'm going to use my own words here, a fair shake, the the access to the due process of law. And for my attorney friends, I might be saying that wrong, but I think you'll also admit that the gist of it's correct. If we don't give everybody the respect of the Constitution and the laws, even when they've done the wrong thing or they've committed a crime, we open doors for the innocent people to be trampled on by not only the court of a public opinion, but we we won't be respecting our Constitution in a way that innocent people will be protected by the Constitution. We have to trust that our Constitution and justice system are going to be able to respect the rights of the individuals, and when they've committed a crime, that justice will prevail. It's the same with our country. We have to be able to fight for our beliefs and fight for the perpetuation of our country and fight for the things that will make keep the foundation of our country strong without trampling on the First Amendment rights of others, the rights or liberties of others to be able to live freely in our country. We don't have to agree with what they're doing. But I believe that if we point out the chaos, the corruption, the disorganization of what's happening in our country, in our government, and what's happening with our politicians, we focus our attention on fixing the problems instead of thinking that everyone who has a different opinion than us is the problem. No, I'm not saying we have to agree with them. There's a lot of these people that I'm referring to that I don't agree with. But it's kind of why I try to point out problems in general or overall instead of focusing on the individuals. Although, every so often, as I will today a little bit, I will point out some of the problems of some of the individuals, but I'll start with that focus, but then I'll kind of zoom out, if you will, and show it as just one example of the overall that's going on. But when you reach the Rubicon where your personal agenda or where people's personal agendas become so important that they themselves can't see how their agenda is going to destroy the future of our country and our freedoms, then their complacency and ours for not being aware of it is going to blind them and us from doing the things that are going to keep our country stable and keep us all a part of the American experience that's going to benefit each other in that respect. I am not, for my friends and the writers screaming right now, you're singing kumbaya. Nope, I'm not. I just get tired of the focus when the problem is more overall. And I got some examples here coming up in a minute, very quickly, to show that. And speaking of that, let's talk about some of the examples of planned chaos, disorganization, quest for power and control, for victories of ideologies instead of victories for America. I don't want to say I don't want to say doing the right thing here, because oftentimes doing the right thing is questionable. Doing the right thing for who? What I'll say instead is, how about sometimes calling for nothing, calling for our elected officials to do nothing? Instead of calling on them to always do the right thing, how about calling on our elected officials to do nothing? Stay out of the way. Get out of our way. Stop trying to fix things, i.e., break things, because sometimes their beliefs in what they do and their opinions are superior to what, or they think they're superior to what we believe. You don't need to manipulate, or we need to show them they don't need to manipulate or play political games to win. Let's talk about Virginia as an example. They're manipulating the political game to win their agendas. They're causing chaos and disorganization. And what I'm referring to is just yesterday they had an election, and it was about redistricting Virginia for a win, for a victory for Democrats, because they're trying to take over the congressional map, we'll say, or trying to take over Congress in the midterms. And some say this is in reaction to or response to what happened in Texas, to redistrict that to be able to get more congressional seats for the Republicans. You see, I can scream and cheer for a Republican victory there. But just like what happens there, the knee-jerk reaction is the other group tries to get power. In the interim, not midterms, in the interim, we the people lose. We get caught in the squeeze play. We get caught in the power struggle, because while they play their game of chess to manipulate the districting, the maps, the congressional maps for a victory, if they lose, we lose, or whatever side loses. But I contend every American loses, no matter what side you're on. And while Democrats in Virginia are cheering, the result may not work out the best for many of your average Democrats. Let me go into a little bit further detail. Virginia did an election yesterday, a special election, on getting the opportunity to redistrict. Basically, what the Democrats have done, who've taken control of Virginia, and they're eliminating gun rights for that matter, and a lot of individual rights. What they've done is they figured out how to redistrict the state to get a congressional map victory for not only their state, but for our country in the midterms. And they're using, of course, the hatred against Donald Trump by the Democrats and many of the independents as a way to fire up the base, to push their agenda over the finish line, i.e., their redistricting plans. I contend that redistricting in the name of voter rights, or anti this politician or anti that politician, or in this case, anti Trump, redistricting is the new gerrymandering. They have learned how to win elections just by changing the maps. You see, politicians have figured out they really don't need us voting in numbers. They just need to corral us on ideologies, narratives, and corral us into the districts that they create using our emotions and social issues for that matter. Once they've corralled us into these ideologies, they are able to corral us into the districts that they create by redistricting using our votes. We have willfully given them the power to redistrict. It's no different on the Republican side than it is on the Democrat side. Yes, I can cheer when the Republicans win because I'm Republican. But I also have enough common sense to say they're opening Pandora's box. We are going to see this trend happening in every state across America. What will happen is every state, every governor, every legislature in America will see an opportunity to follow this blueprint that happened in Virginia and even Texas. But Texas did it a little bit differently than what Virginia did. Virginia just learned how to perfect it, if you will. They've got to learn how to work around some of the rules and laws and procedures in their constitution, by the way, to be able to bring a vote to the people, which gives it legitimacy, right? the people willfully allowing themselves to be corralled into this redistricting mess or into these little districts to give the party in power more power, and of course cross push other agendas in the future across the finish line, like less gun rights for people, more immigration problem issues, because that's what this is going towards. They're trying to flood the maps. I'll get into that in a little bit. Let me go into another topic real quick. You got the point on that one. Thune, the Save America Act. It was a Republican issue to improve voter integrity or election integrity in our country. It's a simple way to do it. It's not machines versus hand counting ballots. It's not any issues that say this election was rigged. It is simple. Be an American citizen. Show your ID. Republicans have control, but because they themselves have a power struggle, and there's complacency on not only the people that are using their power to win, but there's complacency with the ones that put them there. There's chaos being created, and there's a whole bunch of finger pointing as a result. While all of this might sound all too simplistic of a way to put it, I'm doing that on purpose to make the point that the complacency that results because they've created so much chaos, we feel powerless to do anything about it. That's just the way it is. We can also look when we talk about we talk about chaos and disorganization and planned chaos and corruption at all of the people in Congress that have been resigning lately. People on both sides of the aisle, to see all the different scandals that are coming out. If that itself doesn't show you the corruption that's going on, that's being finally exposed and brought to light, it's just like roaches. When there's one on the floor, there's more hiding in the walls. Get another point of, I'll say, contention. This I'm going to point out. Look at all the elected officials that are getting rich while in office. We have gotten so complacent that no one cares anymore. We accept it like it's normal. Yet we focus and scream at the individual politicians that we don't like. I don't think all of them are corrupt, and I don't think that all of them are working against us. I think that the system has gotten so far out of sync with the future of America and Americans that many of them have just become another spoke in the wheel. And once they become part of the group, they get sucked into the system and they forget about the individual Americans. They say they don't, but they themselves become complacent about listening to the American people. And the American people, in return, have got complacent because we're not being listened to. We're being taken care of by government. We're being made promises. We are not voting, which is another huge problem in America. I know I talk about this all the time, but we've become so complacent that we ourselves have allowed the chaos to take over. We've allowed the corruption to take over because in that timeline I told you about earlier, where bureaucracy is growing, politicians are becoming career politicians, complacency in election participation has grown. And as a result, they're getting away with it because of our complacency. And in return, again, to repeat this again, they become complacent about reacting to the needs, wants, desires of the American people because they've allowed government to do its job. So they create more government to do the job for the people. And of course, as a result, disorganization and the needs of the American people are not met. And because they've gotten so sucked into the system, no one cares anymore. I think the system has gotten so far out of sync, not just with the American people, but with government. The system allows for people that, without a good conscience, to gain power from the broken system, or because they gain power because of the elevated, um, they become elevated over society because of their position. They become elevated because of because they become elected officials. Elevated not just their power, but in their attitudes. And again, I hate to keep being redundant here, but they become complacent to listening to the American people as a result. I think individually, many of them are trying to do the right thing, but collectively, they can't work together to do anything in a broken system. Am I advocating for the system to crash or be taken over? No. I'm I'm advocating for people to be more aware of the system being broken, and that it's not that there's individuals, well, there are some individuals that are taking advantage of it for their own power, control, and nefarious purposes, whatever. But because of the broken system, a lot of them just get caught up in it. And the more aware we are of the broken system, and we might be able to see that we have to do something about it, be more involved in the process. So those individual politicians that we keep fussing about aren't getting reelected in the first place, not becoming the career politicians that keep us out of our own government. They keep us out of our marketplace. They keep us out of our health because we've been told, go be complacent. We got you on this. I've got some more examples of planned chaos, complacency, disorganization, and corruption in the marketplace, and some of the infographics that I've got up here to bring up for you on the next part of my show. So let me go back a little bit here. All right, this is an easy infographic, and it's basic, but it says, there's a picture of a woman. It says, we found at least 350,000 dead people currently on our voter rolls. That, I can guarantee, is not nationwide. Every state has dead people on their voter rolls. Every state has people in their voter rolls that should not be there. But our elected officials either don't want to do anything about it because they don't want to get seen as disparaging any voters, whether they're dead or unregistered or not eligible. And of course, the ballot harvesters that use those. So nobody in the system wants to remove the ineligible voters because they see that as an opportunity for power and control. And of course, the chaos that results from these problems make a lot of people not even want to be involved in the process. Picture of Elon Omar, a meme from the Drunk Republican at Drunk Repub on X. If anyone finds out who Elon Omar's accountant is, please let me know ASAP. I desperately need $30 million added to my net worth by accident. Again, the corruption is so rampant when she says something as blatant or as ignorant as, oh, it was a $30 million accounting error, and we don't even have enough of an outrage or acknowledgement of it in the media Everybody is too complacent, so it just let it go. It's all right. Who's paying attention to it? No big deal. They're all doing it. Let's go back to sleep. It's getting worse. At least we got some people resigning. My next meme up, just to be clear, illegals are voting, illegals are receiving benefits, illegals are influencing electoral college votes, illegals are changing House apportionment numbers, illegals are making things more expensive for Americans. Anyone who claims they are not is lying, by Mike Bales on X. My point of bringing this one up, of course, is that in these power struggles, a lot of Democrats, part of the reason they're gerrymandering or changing the redistricting or allowing illegals to vote is to get their agendas across the line, across the finish line, that is, and to not only build their power base and structure, but as we've seen, to find ways to launder more money out of the government. Because when you have chaos, who sees the corruption? Hence, the reason they're flooding our voting rolls, our country, with so many new people that themselves, these illegal immigrants, that is, are complacent. They don't care about our system. Most of them don't. I don't want to say all of them. Most of them don't care about our system. They don't care about the future of America. They're being brought here. They don't even realize they're being used. They're too complacent to realize that they're being used as political pawns in the process. My next meme up is from Bill Maher. Bill Maher just torched the left's hypocrisy over the Pope. He says, I love a hypocritical America. See, liberals suddenly love the Pope. The Pope doesn't believe in gay marriage. Actually, we got to wonder about that sometimes. He doesn't believe in women priests. Of course, we know they don't believe in women priests. Of course, the Catholic Church does not believe in women priests. But now, since the Pope is feuding with Trump, MSNBC loves this guy, he says, or loves the Pope. It's all part of the chaos. You see, everybody in office, everybody in the groups, the people that are perpetuating the narratives, putting it out there, they all switch sides eventually. It all depends on where they can create more chaos to create the smoke and mirrors to cover up the corruption. Go to sleep, everybody. It's all right. They got us, right? Rand Paul says we bring $5 trillion in, we spend $7 trillion, we borrow the difference, the Fed prints money to cover it. That's inflation, and inflation is making you poor. The reason I brought this one up is because nobody's paying attention to the national debt, which is increasing not just because of mismanagement of our money, but because of all the corruption that's running through our government, all the money laundering being done by the bureaucratic agencies, the NGOs, and the politicians in our government. But we, the people, have gotten so complacent or disgusted by the chaos that we just don't worry about it anymore. But also, don't be fooled by the effects of what the appearance of disorganization has on the minds of Americans. When there's so much chaos, it creates so much disorganization, not just in reality in our government, but in our minds. We've become unhealthy because of our food, our food suppliers, our food system, our food in our country. We've become so complacent and unhealthy mentally because of the chaos and disorganization. It's no wonder that we don't feel the fight to fix it, because the corruption, the disorganization, the chaos makes us all just want to just forget about it and walk away from it and ignore it. It's becoming easier for Americans to ignore it than to fight about it, and they know that. Elected officials, NGOs, bureaucratic agencies, everybody in government, perpetuating government and the corruption knows it. It only makes it easier when we're not paying attention. It's intentional. Here's a good one for you. Picture of a guy with a funny face, cartoonish. Says blank is too expensive. It's a circle, by the way, of arrows going around him. Says we need government to fix blank. Arrow points back to the next one. Government gets involved. After government gets involved, blank costs skyrocket. And then the circle continues. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the corruption. It's all part of the chaos. It's all planned. It's all part of the planned disorganization, planned chaos of the whole situation that makes us want to just ignore it. And so subliminally or subconsciously for that matter, we become complacent and we stop being involved. We stop voting. And that continues the same cycle. Bridget Gabriel says, things Congress will not vote for. Term limits. Of course, neither side wants it because they become career politicians. Part of that timeline I referred to earlier. They don't want to vote for bans on stock trading while they're in office. Goes back to the corruption that I've been pointing out. At the same timeline, it's only getting bigger because nobody's expecting them to do the right thing when it comes to stock trading. Congress will not vote for releasing the names of members of Congress who have used our tax dollars in their slush fund, by the way, to settle sexual harassment and abuse claims. Neither side voted to expose the names. We don't know who's getting the money because they won't release the list of that or release that list either. There's too much chaos for us to worry about it, right? The things Congress will vote for is expending TPS, temporary permanent status, for the 350,000 Haitians in our country. And that's just the beginning of all the other immigrants here illegally that they keep catering to. Of course, we expand the voter rolls with complacent people, which we already have in our country, and it only helps them cover up the chaos and corruption in our government. My next meme, of course, is an infographic for My Pillow. If you have not gone and bought anything at My Pillow lately, remember the promo code WWFA at mypillow.com. My next infographic comes up. It's just a black background with white lettering. It says, and I love this one, by the way, Congress has a 15% approval rating and a 94% reelection rate. That math only works if the system is rigged. Think about that. They keep getting in, not just because of, let me back off of that for a second. They keep getting reelected because of, they keep redistricting the maps, the gerrymandering. They've learned how to corral us, not only in our ideologies or into their ideologies or by our ideologies or by our social issue beliefs. They corral us into these so they're able to market to us with that. That's one way they stay in office. And now they've learned how to do the redistricting as they've done in Louisiana, Texas, and now Virginia in such a way that it doesn't matter whether they're unpopular. They cover up their unpopularity with the chaos and corruption and the complacency of the American people. And I keep repeating that on purpose because all too often people want to blame the boogeyman. They want to blame the conspiracy. They want to blame the politician who's in the White House. They want to blame somebody else. But the reality of it is, some of it's us. I'll even be as daring to say a lot of it's us, because we're not pointing out enough of the corruption. But I will say this, I do believe the timeline is changing. More and more people, and that's why I think more people in Congress have resigned. More and more people are waking up to the corruption. They're calling it out. I am, as much as I've been complaining and as pessimistic as I've been sounding, I'm extremely optimistic that we're headed in the right direction because people are waking up. Less people are focusing on single issues and single politicians and focusing more on the corruption that does encompass individuals or calls out some of these corrupt individuals that are in office and doing nefarious things within our government, in the NGOs and the bureaucratic agencies, etc. I will go on to the next infographic. Picture of Ilhan Omar. I'm going to bring her up again. It says, I find it absolutely hilarious that Ilhan Omar revised her financials from $30 million to $90,000. Simple accounting error, right? Oh no, they've noticed I'm committing fraud. Quick, delete everything. Tell them I'm completely broke. They'll never find out now. Of course, that's by Walter Kurt on X. Again, now that they're paying attention and they're realizing that more Americans are looking for the corruption, they're trying to find as many ways they can cover it up as possible. Of course, later we'll find out that if they expose more corruption with her, she'll say, well, that accounting error, I exposed the accounting error. It wasn't my fault. It was an accounting error. It wasn't corruption. Again, it's part of the game. Brad Umbre from X says, not a single thing was done to advance the Save America Act through the Senate this week. No one is better at wasting time and squandering a majority than Republicans when handed a mandate. As I've said before, I don't think it's individual Republicans that are bad. I think when they all become collective, same with the Democrats and politicians in general, when they become a collective group, the power struggle within causes enough problems that nothing gets done. We, the people, suffer as a result. Here's a meme by the Babylon Bee infographic. 18-year-old trying to file her taxes, wishing her teachers had spent less time on polyqueer trans theory. My reason for bringing this up is not to call out the social issues, but to call out what they're not teaching our children in schools. They're not teaching our children to be critical thinkers. They're not teaching our children basic skills of organization, basic skills for society, the free market system, civics. They're not teaching them the basics of what they need to not only survive in our society, but thrive in our society and think for themselves in a way that they'll prosper, that they'll be able to know how to do their own taxes. Our education system has been dominated by the Department of Education for way too many years, and it's been controlled by whoever's in office. And when Democrats are in office, they put their ideologies and their social issue agendas through the Department of Education, which is why we have so many children learning things like social issues instead of basic skills to get them through life. And that is one of the biggest problems because, again, if we keep them fat, unhealthy, fed, scraps, taken care of by government, not smart enough, not able to critically think your way out of situations, figure out how to do things for yourself. We keep them out of knowing all that. They become part of the complacent society that doesn't do anything to fix the problems. Richardson Nutritional, if you want to take care of your medical freedom, rncstore.com, using the promo code WWFA is one way that you can do things to take care of your own health so you'll at least be healthy enough to fight your way out of a socialist or communist takeover if and when that happens in our country. I'm optimistic that it won't. I'm just optimistic that we're not going to have tough times in the future that are going to have to cause us to find ways to fix society the harder way, because most people have become too complacent to fight for our rights while we still have the ability to get them and maintain them without having to actually fight for them. Spitfire on X at Real Spitfire says, "We've reached the point in the matrix where the government officials are guilty of fraud, or who are guilty of fraud are creating laws that will imprison the people investigating their crimes." Incredible. Don't believe that one? Look at California, where they're creating laws to make individual investigators, or the ones that are out there now exposing the fraud, like Nick Shirley, by the way, they're making it illegal to expose fraud. Now, if your elected officials are in a state making it illegal to expose fraud, isn't it a good assumption that they're guilty of fraud themselves? My friends, look at what's going on. If this happens in California, and I always say, look at what happens in your state, because it's going to happen in a state near you or to your own state. Look at Virginia. Look, they're stealing gun rights. They're now stealing the Electoral College. They're stealing the congressional maps through small victories like this. But because people aren't noticing this, they're too complacent. When it all comes out and gets exposed later and we can't do anything about it, we'll just point to that period of time in the timeline when the American people, or too many people, were too complacent to expose it and expose the problems, instead of whining and crying about social issues or individual politicians. The next infographic up has a cartoon of a guy that says, I'm a politician making millions by insider trading. IRS guy next to him is folded, saying, I didn't see anything. Down below, picture of a waiter. I'm just a waiter trying to pay my bills. IRS agent next to him is not blindfolded, says, you're going to be audited. This is the problem. Once they get in power and they create laws making people the criminals for exposing the fraud, they then turn the government or the bureaucratic agencies against them, just like they've done in a lot of cases with the Second Amendment. Picture the Virginia governor in this next infographic by the Gateway Pundit. Says, radical Democrat Virginia governor signs away the Commonwealth's electoral votes to the national popular vote scam. Democrats one step closer to rigging the presidency forever. This is an issue I brought up a couple of years ago. Our electoral college that votes for our president is determined by the electoral votes of a state, the people who hold those electoral positions in every state. Now, they generally are required to vote or cast their vote for president based on the popular vote in their state, not the country. Our founding fathers created the Electoral College, so our country is not determined by the popular vote of the country. So this way, every state, even the smaller states, have as much of a say in the process as the larger states. So it becomes more of a blend of what the people want, regardless of what state they live in, than what the national popular vote wants. The Democrats and groups with nefarious purposes have found their way around this. They have said, well, okay, we just have to create legislation in our state that requires our electors in the Electoral College to vote the way of the national vote instead of the state vote. Virginia is one of several states that have already jumped on that bandwagon. It's something that we need to reverse the trend on or stop the trend, or we lose our country to a national vote, which goes into the chaos that they've created in our immigration system and, of course, in our voting rolls by allowing all of the dead voters, illegal voters, people without citizenship, et cetera, have allowing them to have voting rights. Is it on purpose? Yes, of course it's on purpose. And they're manipulating the congressional maps and doing the redistricting. Like I said, it's the new version of gerrymandering to accomplish and help them accomplish these goals. Next infographic. NASA's Artemis 2 rocket cost $4 billion. Planning began in 2017. Passengers, 4. Miles traveled, 695,000 miles. Gavin Newsom's bullet train, in comparison, $126 billion, $122 billion more for that matter, for people in the back. Planning began in 1996. 0 passengers, 0 miles traveled. This is the corruption that I've been telling you about. But as long as they're creating enough chaos and disorganization, of course, not only to cover it up, but to make enough people complacent and not care, go back to sleep, they'll still get away with it. This is by Connor Boyack. He is, I do a lot of his memes. Every government creates 3 things: a new problem, a constituency that benefits from the problem, bureaucrats whose careers depend on managing it, not solving it. Then they ask for more funding. This is the problem within our bureaucratic state, our the bureaucratic system of our government, for that matter. And part of what I said that creates complacency in people. They create a bureaucratic department, a new bureaucracy that takes care of a certain group of people, and they're usually created because of the social issues and narratives that they use to soften their targets out front or create enough of a momentum to get the momentum that they need to create these things. And the circle continues. Meanwhile, our government's having to print more and more money to sustain this. What are we going to do when this all crashes down? The complacent people are going to scream, how did this happen? Because they were asleep at the wheel. One of my last memes up here says, needless bureaucracy only complicates life for everyone involved, as high as frustration levels. Needless bureaucracy only complicates life for everyone involved and drives up expenses as high as frustration levels. It's the classic too many cooks in the kitchen scene. Only these cooks walk away with the taxpayer-funded paychecks. It goes for the people working in the bureaucratic agencies, as well as the politicians benefiting from it. I'll end on the Patriot Mobile infographic and not end exactly, but I'm going to ask people in the audience, please, go follow me on social media. I'm on X, Instagram, TikTok, all the different social platforms at William Wallace for America. I'd be grateful, honored, and extremely thankful if you shared my show with somebody else that you think might be interested in learning more about how to look at things a little bit differently. I don't claim to have all the right answers. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get my momentum up, as you might hear. But the reality is, I just want more people to pay attention to the overall picture of what's going on instead of allowing yourselves to get caught up in the narratives and individual politicians. Get caught up in making a difference instead of the complacency that causes people to sit back and do absolutely nothing. In the meantime, thank you again, and God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you so much.